And welcome back to Michigan's Morning Show. I'm Cheryl Fritze. It's Wednesday, February 29th. So pleased to have on the phone with me now Kyle Melinn, news editor for MIRS. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning, Cheryl. It's good talking to you again.
It's very good to talk with you again. I feel like it's old home week a little bit here. I love it. Thank you for joining us this morning. Obviously, the topic of the day is the Michigan Republican presidential primary held yesterday. As we've been saying this morning, I went to bed and it was still too close to call. Some folks stayed up much later to find out the win happened last night. We'll just start with your basic thoughts on what happened yesterday.
Well, Mitt Romney avoided some national embarrassment, I think, Cheryl, by winning the popular vote 41 to 38% over Rick Santorum. And if you look at the numbers when it comes down to actual delegates, and that's the people from Michigan who are going to represent the state in the convention in Tampa, Rick Santorum did just as well as Mitt Romney, really. The Republican Party breaks this down by congressional district, and Santorum won 7 of the state's 14 congressional districts, and so did Romney. So they both won 14 delegates there, and then the last 2 were won by the at-large. So Romney won those, so he got 16 delegates to Santorum's 14. But really, I guess, the story that everybody walked away with was the fact that Mitt Romney was down in the polls in his own state. The national media was on Mitt Romney death watch, and he was able to pull out a pretty slim victory, but a victory nonetheless.
Well, when you say Mitt Romney death watch, were we really that close?
Well, I think, from judging to the amount of media coverage about the Mitt Romney loss in Michigan, if that's what it would come to, and the amount of media in Novi yesterday at the suburban collection place, show place, where the Romney Party was, they were waiting to do that story. That Mitt Romney was losing his own state and what kind of impact that would have on the rest of the race. That was definitely the next storyline that folks are going on, and that was the storyline that was going to dominate the race going into Super Tuesday, and that's something he certainly didn't want. It would have hurt with fundraising. It would have hurt him morally as well, having that. I mean, he had a 15-point lead in Michigan on February the 2nd. And then Santorum cleaned up in that Minnesota, Colorado, Missouri trifecta. And then all of a sudden, Lieutenant Ted Santorum, all of a sudden, in a week's time, was up 15 points. It was crazy. Nobody saw it coming. And it put the entire Romney team on scramble mode and in a position they never thought they'd have to be in. They had to spend money in this state. Romney and his allies had to spend at least $3.6 million. They didn't think they were going to have to spend much of anything. They thought they could come in, wave to the state, say, hey, thanks a lot for being here. I love you. You guys love me. And then go on and campaign in Ohio. He had to spend his entire weekend in Michigan, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He did go to the Daytona 500, but then came back and then was here again on Monday. That's time spent away from Ohio and the other Super Tuesday states, and actually a win for Obama and President Barack Obama and the other candidates in the field, because it really keeps things going.
Well, I'm wondering, since obviously the win in Michigan and wins in Michigan and Arizona perhaps make up for him not being able to move on to other states for Super Tuesday, looking towards that. But we talked about, and it was much talked about the last couple of days, Santorum perhaps muddying the waters by inviting Democrats to vote. What kind of effect do you think that had on him?
Well, you know what? I think that it did have some positive impact. I mean, if you look at the congressional districts, the 13th congressional district is primarily at least half of that's in the city of Detroit. It's predominantly Democrat, and Rick Santorum won that. I think without a concentrated or at least some type of effort among Democratic activists to get out there and vote, I don't think that happened. So I think it had a little bit of an impact there. But I think also that it could have some negative backlash on Rick Santorum if that storyline continues going into the Super Tuesday states. The Republicans want to pick their own nominee. They don't want Democrats and crossovers coming in, fiddling around and trying to decide for them. The take a big affront to that. And they also think Rick Santorum may have been making a deal with the devil in going over and trying to appeal to the Democrats. You know, it's one thing if they just come over and vote for you because they like your ideas, you know, and that's what happened in Michigan with John McCain back in 2000. But it's an entirely different deal if you're reaching out to them to vote for you, not because they like your ideas, but just to play havoc and to try and bring this race into a longer time period. And that's exactly what Rick Santorum did with his robocalls and this not-so-subtle push to vote for him.
Well, and we have about a minute 40 left, and I hate to push this question on you. We'll have to come back to it another day. But the delegates, that gets a little confusing for folks sometimes watching popular vote and then the delegates.
Yeah, because the delegate count is what actually determines who the nominee is going to be. You know, there's a certain amount of delegates, 1,000, 2,000, I can't remember on the top of my head. But a Republican candidate needs 50% plus one of that delegate total in order to win the nomination. Now, every year since the 50s, that race has been determined, you know, by these primaries, by these caucuses. A candidate has been able to get that number without it going to a convention and then having what you call the brokered convention, where nobody has 50% plus one of the delegates, and then the delegates got to try and figure it out. You know, there's some talk that would have happened this time. I don't think that's going to happen. Romney again won, and I think it's just a matter of time before he gets the nomination.
Well, very good. Kyle, it's always a pleasure to talk with you this rainy morning, my friend. Thank you so much.
Hey, good talking to you, Cheryl.
Very good. We'll be back with Michigan's Morning Show. I'm Cheryl Fritze. We'll be back right after this.